Everyone obsesses over passive income streams like they're the holy grail of financial freedom. Every entrepreneur swears by multiple revenue sources. Every business podcast mentions diversification within the first 10 minutes. Your mentor probably lectured you about not putting all your eggs in one basket when you started your first side hustle. But here's what nobody tells you. Building multiple income streams simultaneously is the fastest way to guarantee you'll never build wealth. You spread yourself thin, you check your various ventures, the progress is embarrassing. You're juggling 3 different projects and your total monthly profit across all of them is what? Maybe $200. That's less than you'd make focusing on one thing properly. The math doesn't support the hustle culture narrative. The diversification feels more like organized chaos than strategic planning. So you start wondering if you're doing something fundamentally wrong. Maybe multiple income streams work for people who already have money and teams, but for someone starting alone, it seems like a recipe for burnout without breakthrough. You'll be exhausted before any of these ventures actually gain traction. I felt exactly this way for years. Then I discovered something called the 10-6-3 principle. It's a simple framework that completely changed how I understood the timeline of building sustainable wealth through focused effort. Once you see this pattern, you'll never approach business building the same way again, because here's what's actually happening. Wealth building isn't about breadth. It's about depth followed by strategic expansion. The gains come from mastering one thing completely before layering on additional streams. You're not thinking small, you're just confusing the sequence of operations. Let me show you exactly what I mean. The 10-6-3 principle describes the optimal timeline for building sequential income streams that actually compound on each other. Specifically, it reveals that mastering your first income stream takes approximately 10 years. Building your second stream leveraging the first takes only 6 additional years. Creating your third stream leveraging both previous streams takes just 3 more years. 10 years for the first foundation, 6 years for the second layer, 3 years for the third. The timeline compresses even though the complexity increases. This pattern emerges from the mathematics of skill compounding and resource accumulation, and it explains why so many entrepreneurs quit or stagnate right before their efforts start multiplying exponentially. Let me walk through concrete examples so you can see this playing out in real business terms. Imagine someone who starts a consulting practice from absolute zero. No clients, no reputation, no network. Just expertise and determination. They spend the first 10 years building the single business relentlessly. Years 1 through 3 are brutal. They're learning how to find clients, deliver results, price services, and manage operations. Revenue is inconsistent. Some months are feast, others are famine. They're earning perhaps $60,000 annually, barely more than a regular job would pay. Years 4 through 7 bring stabilization. They've figured out their ideal client. They've refined their delivery process. They've built a reputation that generates referrals. Revenue climbs to $150,000 annually. They're profitable but still trading time for money at a relatively linear rate. Years 8 through 10 deliver transformation. They've systematized their approach. They've hired support staff. They've increased prices because demand exceeds capacity. Revenue reaches $400,000 annually with healthy margins. More importantly, they've accumulated something invaluable, which is deep expertise, established systems, strong reputation, financial reserves, and a network of relationships. This is the foundation. 10 years to build it properly. Most people never complete this phase because they get distracted chasing the next opportunity before mastering the first one. Now watch what happens when they build their second income stream. They launch a digital product business, creating courses and templates based on their consulting expertise. This isn't starting from zero. They're leveraging everything they built in the first 10 years. They have an audience from their consulting work. They have proven frameworks to productize. They have credibility that makes people willing to buy. They have capital to invest in quality production. In year 11, they create their first digital product while maintaining their consulting practice. Sales are modest, maybe $50,000 in revenue, but the foundation is established. In years 12 and 13, they expand the product line and improve their marketing. The digital business grows to $200,000 in annual revenue with minimal ongoing time investment since products sell while they sleep. In years 14 through 16, the digital business reaches $500,000 in annual revenue. Combined with their still-growing consulting practice, now at $600,000, they're generating over $1 million annually from two streams that reinforce each other. The consulting feeds the digital business with case studies and credibility. The digital business feeds the consulting practice with leads and authority. 6 years to build the second stream to substantial scale. Not 10 years like the first stream, but 6, because they're building on an established foundation rather than starting from scratch. The acceleration is already visible. The final phase reveals the true power of sequential building. In year 17, they launch a third income stream by creating a membership community. This isn't another random venture. It's a strategic layer that leverages both previous businesses. Their consulting clients want ongoing support beyond project engagements. Their digital product customers want community and accountability. They have content from both businesses to fuel the membership. They have brand recognition that makes the launch credible. Year 17 generates $100,000 from the membership with relatively modest effort because the infrastructure and audience already exist. Year 18 sees growth to $300,000 as word spreads and retention improves. Year 19 pushes the membership to $600,000 in annual recurring revenue. Now they have 3 income streams, consulting at $700,000, digital products at $600,000, and membership at $600,000, generating nearly $2 million in combined annual revenue. 10 years for the first stream. 6 more years for the second. 3 more years for the third. The timeline compressed dramatically, even though each business was substantial. This is the 10-6-3 principle in action. It's not a shortcut or a hack. It's simply what focused wealth building looks like when you resist the temptation to diversify prematurely. The later streams build faster because they stand on the shoulders of everything that came before. Most people never experience this acceleration because they try to build all 3 streams simultaneously from day one. They split their attention, dilute their effort, and ensure that none of the streams ever develops the depth required to serve as a foundation for the others. They stay stuck in the early struggle phase across multiple ventures instead of reaching the mastery phase in even one. Understanding the 10-6-3 principle provides something incredibly valuable. It gives you permission to focus. It tells you exactly when to expand rather than guessing or following arbitrary advice. It transforms wealth building from a confusing juggling act into a sequential process you can actually execute. Let me break down why this pattern exists mathematically. Because understanding the mechanics helps you resist the temptation to deviate during the difficult early years. Wealth building follows a compounding curve, but the compounding isn't just financial. It's also relational, reputational, and operational. These forms of capital compound just like money, but they require concentrated effort to accumulate. When you're building your first income stream, you're starting with 0 in all categories. 0 reputation means you have to prove yourself with every interaction. 0 relationships means you have to build your network from scratch. 0 systems means you're inventing processes as you go. This is why the first stream takes a full decade. You're not just building a business. You're building yourself into someone capable of running a successful business. You're accumulating skills, confidence, judgment, and resilience that can't be shortcut. In the early years of your first stream, progress feels invisible because you're building foundation rather than structure. You're learning lessons that won't pay off for years. You're making connections that won't generate revenue until much later. You're developing expertise that hasn't yet translated into premium pricing. Your brain sees the modest financial results and concludes you're failing. But you're not failing. You're accumulating the compound interest of experience, and that interest hasn't matured yet. In the middle years of your first stream, the accumulated capital starts generating visible returns. Your reputation generates inbound leads. Your systems create efficiency. Your expertise commands higher prices. The growth accelerates not because you're working harder, but because your past investments are finally paying dividends. In the later years of your first stream, you've crossed into what I call the surplus phase. You're generating more revenue than you need personally. You have more opportunities than you can accept. You have systems that run without your constant involvement. You have credibility that opens doors effortlessly. This surplus is what makes the second stream possible. You're not starting from 0 anymore. You're starting from abundance. When you launch your second income stream, you're bringing massive advantages. You have capital to invest in quality launches. You have an audience to market to immediately. You have systems you can adapt rather than building from scratch. You have confidence from having succeeded once already. This is why the second stream takes 6 years instead of 10. You're still building something substantial, but you're building with better tools, more resources, and greater expertise. The learning curve is shorter because you've already climbed a similar curve once. The timeline compresses not because the work is easier, but because you're more capable and better resourced. When you launch your third income stream, the advantages multiply further. You have 2 successful businesses providing capital, audience, and credibility. You have a team you can deploy across ventures. You have a reputation that makes partnerships and opportunities come to you. You have pattern recognition from building 2 previous businesses. This is why the third stream takes only 3 years to reach substantial scale. You're not learning the basics anymore. You're applying mastery to a new application. The wealth acceleration you experience isn't luck. It's the mathematical result of compounding advantages across sequential ventures. Let me show you how dramatically different this approach looks compared to the typical scattered strategy. Consider 2 entrepreneurs who start at the same time with similar skills and ambition. Their diverging paths illustrate why the 10-6-3 principle matters so profoundly. Jennifer focused relentlessly on one thing, building a graphic design agency. For 10 years, she turned down other opportunities. She ignored trends. She said no to partnerships that would have diluted her focus. People thought she was thinking too small. Why wasn't she launching a course? Why wasn't she building a personal brand? Why wasn't she diversifying? Year 1 through 3 were humbling. She earned $45,000 annually, barely scraping by. But she was learning her craft, understanding clients, and building systems. Years 4 through 7 brought stability. She earned $120,000 annually with consistent clients and refined processes. Years 8 through 10 delivered breakthrough. She earned $350,000 annually with a small team and systematized operations. At the 10-year mark, she finally felt ready to expand. She launched a design template marketplace leveraging her agency's best work. Year 11 generated $40,000 from templates. Years 12 and 13 grew it to $180,000. Years 14 through 16 scaled it to $450,000. Her agency simultaneously grew to $500,000. Combined revenue exceeded $950,000 annually. In year 17, she launched a design subscription service for small businesses. Year 17 generated $80,000. Year 18 reached $250,000. Year 19 hit $550,000. Total revenue across 3 streams approached $2 million annually. 19 years from start to substantial wealth, following the 10-6-3 timeline almost perfectly. Michael took the diversification approach from day 1. He started a graphic design freelance practice, but also launched a YouTube channel, started a print-on-demand store, and joined a network marketing company. He was hustling across 4 different ventures simultaneously. After 5 years, his design practice earned $35,000 annually because he'd never focused enough to systematize it. His YouTube channel had 800 subscribers because he posted inconsistently. His print-on-demand store generated $200 monthly because he never learned marketing properly. His network marketing venture had collapsed after 2 years of effort. He was exhausted, scattered, and no closer to wealth than when he started. He'd spent 5 years making beginner mistakes across 4 ventures instead of reaching intermediate competence in one. At the 10-year mark, he'd cycled through 8 different ventures. His design work still earned only $60,000 because he kept getting distracted. He had no substantial income stream to leverage. He had no deep expertise to productize. He had no foundation to build upon. At the 19-year mark, he was still hustling, still scattered, still hoping the next opportunity would be the breakthrough. His total income across various ventures was perhaps $90,000 annually. Both started at the same time with similar abilities. The only difference was that Jennifer understood the sequence while Michael didn't. Jennifer built depth then breadth. Michael chased breadth and achieved neither depth nor breadth. The 10-6-3 principle would have told Michael exactly what to expect. It would have shown him that mastery takes a decade, that the second stream builds faster on a solid foundation, and that the third stream leverages both previous streams exponentially. With that roadmap, he might have found the discipline to focus. The 10-6-3 principle also explains why mentors often give contradicting advice. Some successful people emphasize focus relentlessly. Others preach diversification constantly. Both are right, but they're talking about different phases. The focus advocates are usually describing the first 10 years. They remember how critical concentration was to building their initial success. They know that scattered effort during the foundation phase guarantees mediocrity. The diversification advocates are usually describing years 10 and beyond. They're operating from a position of established success where adding streams makes strategic sense. They've forgotten how long it took to build that foundation. When a beginner hears diversification advice from someone in year 15 of their journey and tries to apply it in year 2, disaster follows. The advice isn't wrong. It's just meant for a different phase. Understanding the 10-6-3 sequence helps you interpret advice correctly. Focus advice applies to your current stream until it reaches maturity. Diversification advice applies after you've built a foundation worth leveraging. Let me address a psychological obstacle that derails many entrepreneurs during the critical first decade. When you're focused on one thing while others are seemingly doing everything, you feel like you're falling behind. You see peers launching podcasts, writing books, starting agencies, creating products, and building personal brands simultaneously. Meanwhile, you're grinding away at one business that's growing slowly. The comparison is brutal. This feeling is understandable but completely misguided. Those scattered peers are almost certainly building nothing of lasting value. They're confusing activity with progress. They're generating content about success rather than actually building successful businesses. 5 years later, most of them will have pivoted multiple times and built nothing substantial. Meanwhile, your focused effort will have created something real. A business with systems, reputation, revenue, and growth trajectory. Something that can serve as a foundation for everything else you'll build. The entrepreneurs who achieve significant wealth are almost always the ones who ignored the noise and focused intensely during their first decade. They're the ones who resisted the temptation to chase every opportunity. They understood that depth beats breadth during the foundation phase. Reframing focus, this way, helps you survive the comparison trap during the early years. When you see others doing more and feel inadequate, remind yourself that you're building a foundation while they're building a facade. Your approach is slower initially, but dramatically faster over the full timeline. Let me give you a practical application of the 10-6-3 principle for your own wealth building. First, identify where you are in the sequence honestly. If you've been working on your primary income stream for less than 10 years and it hasn't reached substantial scale, you're still in the foundation phase. Adding more streams now will slow everything down. If you've built one income stream to significant scale with systems and surplus, you're ready for the second stream. If you have 2 successful streams, you're positioned for the third. Second, commit to completion rather than addition. Most people have 3 half-built ventures rather than one completed foundation. Audit your current activities ruthlessly. Which single income stream has the most potential? Which one are you best positioned to dominate? Choose one and abandon or minimize everything else until it reaches maturity. Third, define what maturity means for your first stream. Maturity isn't a revenue number. It's a state where the business has systems that run without your constant involvement, generates surplus capital beyond your personal needs, has established reputation and market position, and provides leverage for building additional streams. For some businesses, maturity might mean $200,000 in annual profit. For others, it might mean $2 million. The number matters less than the characteristics. Fourth, resist premature expansion regardless of opportunity. The most dangerous moment in wealth building is when your first stream starts succeeding and opportunities multiply. You'll be tempted to launch the course, start the podcast, write the book, and open the second location simultaneously. Resist everything except deepening your first stream until it truly reaches maturity. Fifth, plan your second and third streams strategically. They should leverage your first stream, not compete with it. The second stream should use the audience, expertise, or assets from the first. The third stream should integrate with both previous streams. This creates a wealth ecosystem rather than separate businesses. There's another dimension to the 10-6-3 principle that rarely gets discussed. The timeline isn't just about building businesses. It's about building yourself into someone capable of managing multiple income streams simultaneously. Managing one business well requires a specific skill set. Managing two requires additional capabilities around delegation, prioritization, and systems thinking. Managing three requires even more sophisticated judgment about resource allocation and strategic focus. If you try to manage three businesses before you've developed the capacity to manage one excellently, all three will suffer. You'll be overwhelmed, scattered, and ineffective. The 10 years you spend mastering your first stream aren't just building the business. They're building you into someone with the judgment, discipline, and capabilities to handle complexity. The 6 years on your second stream further develop your capacity for managing multiple priorities. The 3 years on your third stream represent mastery-level execution. By year 19, you're not the same person who started in year 1. You've developed dramatically greater capability through sequential challenges. This personal development compounds just like the financial results. Let me leave you with a perspective shift that ties this all together. Most people evaluate their progress by comparing themselves to others at different stages. They see someone with multiple successful income streams and feel behind because they only have one. They don't see that the successful person spent a decade building their first stream before adding others. They only see the current state, not the timeline that created it. The 10-6-3 principle suggests a different approach. Evaluate your progress by comparing yourself to the appropriate timeline. Ask whether you're where you should be given your phase, not whether you match someone else's results. If you're in year 4 of building your first stream and it's generating $80,000 annually with improving systems, you're exactly on track. The fact that someone else has 3 streams generating millions is irrelevant. They're in year 19. You're in year 4. Different phases entirely. Your current position might seem modest compared to your ultimate goals, but it's perfect for your timeline. The wealth is already locked in mathematically if you follow the sequence. You just haven't reached the later phases where it becomes visible yet. The entrepreneur who understands this truth behaves differently than the entrepreneur who doesn't. They're patient during the foundation decade because they know what's coming. They're ruthlessly focused on depth because they understand the leverage it provides. They're unshaken by others' apparent success because they recognize different timelines. Most importantly, they don't scatter their effort. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't convince themselves that focus is thinking too small. They simply execute the sequence, build each stream to maturity, and let the mathematics deliver exactly what it promised. 10 years feels like forever when you're living through it. 6 years feels substantial but achievable. 3 years passes quickly. And then you're standing with multiple income streams that generate more wealth than you could create through scattered effort, wondering why everyone doesn't understand what you now understand. Wealth building isn't about breadth, it's about sequential depth. The magic is real.